Hello and welcome to episode 56 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. On today's show, Marisa from Chicago will be back so that the two of us can continue our conversation on Harry Potter, and specifically the Wizarding World of Harry Potter at Universal Orlando Resort. You can hear the first part of that talk on episode 55 of the podcast. Later on, my wife Courtney will be back to do another dining review. We'll be talking about Storybook Dining at Artist Point with Snow White. You are not going to want to miss this one. I will end this episode with the third and final question in our one-year anniversary giveaway. Just answer the questions in the comments for this episode of the podcast on the YouTube channel and make sure you're subscribed. A correct answer is worth 3 entries and an incorrect answer is still worth an entry. I can only mail the prize pack to addresses in the United States, so keep that in mind when you enter. To see all of the items available in the prize pack and for clues to getting the questions right, go to twitter.com/TGTTpodcast. Right now, we welcome back Marisa from Chicago to do the show. When we left off in episode 55, we had gone through Diagon Alley in Universal Studios, Florida. It's time to head to King's Cross Station and get on the Hogwarts Express. We're taking that train to Universal's Islands of Adventure. Marisa, why don't you describe this experience to everyone?
So I think just to start saying that it is always so in demand. You know, this has like an hour wait when the walk in between the parks is like 3 minutes. So just from that perspective, you can see how good that experience must be if people are willing to wait for it instead of just saying, that's okay, I'll walk, 3 to 5 minutes. In Harry Potter, Harry takes the train from King's Cross Station to Hogwarts. In order to get to the special platform 9 3/4 that has the Hogwarts train, he has to go through the wall in between platforms 9 and 10. And when you're in the queue walking through, there is actually a moment where if you're watching people ahead of you, it looks like they go through the wall. And it's an incredibly neat trick. It's incredibly fun to watch. People just disappear as they go through. And then, of course, as you walk through, you come out on the other side, and it looks like you're standing on the platform as it looks in the movies.
And I had a really good team member once who just stopped me and said, hold on, wait for this, enjoy looking at it. And it was really cool. I really appreciated that because I would have just missed it. Because when you're in a queue, eventually you start to get frustrated. Let's be honest, no matter how cool the queue, whether it's Rise of the Resistance and Flight of Passage with great queues at Walt Disney World, or if it's this queue, which is a really fantastic queue, there's only so much you can put up with, and when you miss these things, you really regret it. So I'm glad that you mentioned that because I think it's worth it because this is when you're starting to get sick of it because you're just about to get to the point where you see the train and you see some of the other things that are going to excite you and feel like you're finally starting to make your way over there.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely placed very well within the queue. And the queue also has advertisements throughout it that are actual advertisements that you see in the movies, which is just another really neat detail that they added. But then the train itself brings you from Universal Studios to Islands of Adventure. But while you're on the train, you get your compartment that you sit in, just like you see in the movies where, everyone chooses a compartment, they sit down. And when you look out the window, you're not seeing the theme parks. You're seeing a screen that actually shows the landscape as you go through, like you would see in the movies. It shows different characters popping up with little messages. You can ride the train from Universal Studios to Islands of Adventure and the reverse. And each direction has a different little film for you to watch. So it's really cool taking it each way. It's a separate experience.
But if you're okay with only getting one of those experiences, go from Islands of Adventure to Universal Studios because that inevitably has the shorter wait. For whatever reason, once people get over to Islands of Adventure because it has so many cool rides, they usually stay there. They don't head back to Universal Studios Florida after that. So that's just a little pro tip. So we get over to Hogsmeade. Describe the entire reveal and let us know what we're seeing as far as how it relates to canon.
Hogsmeade in the Harry Potter world is this village by Hogwarts. And once the students reach a certain age, they can get permission to go into the village on the weekends. And there's candy shops, there's different activities they can do, and it's really fun and exciting. And when we're first introduced to this village in the movies, it's winter. And it's just gorgeously, covered in snow, everything. And when you emerge from that train station, you walk into Hogsmeade, that's what you see. It's beautiful. It's got, the little cottages, the little roofs covered in snow. There's a little snowman that someone made. And you really feel like you are in a tiny little village with candy shops that look just like they do in the movies. And then you can turn and you see the castle, the iconic Hogwarts castle, standing in the background. And what's really, really exciting is there's a ride inside of it, and you can actually walk through the castle to get onto this ride.
And you want to talk about immersive cues. This cue is second to none, honestly. I love this cue so much. Just go into all the detail that you get to see when you're walking through the castle.
This cue, like you said, it really truly is second to none. It feels like you're walking through the actual castle. When you first walk up to the queue and you walk into the castle gates and you see it, rising above you, and you walk past it, and then you get closer and you actually go inside the castle and you see the big statues of the founders and their symbols. You see portraits on the walls, just like you see in the movies. You go through at one point and you see Harry, Ron, and Hermione giving you a message. You walk through these winding staircases. It really does feel like you are on the set of the movies walking through Hogwarts. And then, of course, the ride itself, once you get to it, I love it. This is another one where I would say it's definitely more extreme than Gringotts in terms of motion sensing, but it's such an incredible ride.
And as somebody who is 6'4", I'm just going to say, before you enter, they have a test seat. And you can check to see if you meet the qualifications in the test seat. And if you have a long torso, like I have a long torso, you might want to just slump your shoulders just a little bit. You probably will get on. The first time they ever tried to put me on, I didn't know what they were doing, so I didn't realize that, I tensed up and I didn't realize it. I can ride it, but it's close. And some of the bigger theme park fans, you might not be able to ride it. It's unfortunate, but it's worth it to go to that test seat and just make sure, because if you can ride it, I think it's an experience that's worth the wait.
Yes, and if for some reason you can't or don't want to ride, you can still walk through the castle. And I feel like that's an experience on its own. If you have time to spare and you're okay with saying, I'm going to stand in this queue and not ride the ride, being able to walk through the castle and then exiting before you get on the ride is still really cool because you get to see all that theming and all those details.
And it's also another ride where you might have to worry about motion sickness. So if your family is going to do it and maybe you're bigger, or maybe you get motion sickness, or maybe you just don't feel like being uncomfortable on your vacation, that's valid too. You can go through the queue with your family, talk to everybody, experience all of this great theming, and then just chicken exit and hang out in the gift shop, which is also an incredible gift shop, by the way.
Yeah, it's a really cool gift shop. It's one of those gift shops that will actually trap you, because then you see everything there and it's not an easy one to just walk right out of. You got to kind of put your blinders on if you're not wanting to spend anything.
And I'm not sure if we ever mentioned the name of this ride. So what is the name of the ride, Marisa?
I believe it's Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey. It's definitely more motion intense. The seat you're in moves. You also have screens. You get flipped on your back because it goes back, it goes forward. It's definitely an intense ride. If you are a big Harry Potter fan and you think there's at least some chance you won't hate it, it's worth riding. And maybe if you think you might be a little messed up from it afterward, maybe this is one you ride at the end of the day. You kind of save it so then you've got your whole day in and it doesn't mess you up at all for the rest of your day.
And then I really love that they included this Flight of the Hippogriff. I joke sometimes because of the Winnie the Pooh franchise, I call it Flight of the Huffalumps and Woozles, but Flight of the Hippogriff is a kiddie roller coaster, and it's really important that they have this there because the other Harry Potter rides might be too intense for some kids, so having this little kiddie roller coaster that almost anybody can ride, it's really fun. I would compare it, if you're a Walt Disney World fan, it's basically the Barnstormer in Fantasyland. If you are a Universal fan, it's basically the Woody the Woodpecker kids roller coaster. But you get really great sight lines of all of Islands of Adventure. I know I could see my hotel the one day I was staying at Endless Summer, and I could see my hotel room from the top of the lift. You know, it's not an e-ticket ride. It's not meant to be an e-ticket ride. It's something that has a good queue. It's really short, but it gives kids a chance to experience something in a land that doesn't have a ton for really, really little kids.
Yeah, definitely. It's a nice, cute, fun ride, and it's a great way to include pretty much everyone in the ride experience because, yeah, the other Harry Potter rides, they'll definitely have some people taking the chicken exit instead. And you know what? Rightly so. Not every ride's going to be for everybody, but Flight of the Hippogriff is probably for pretty much anyone.
But now let's talk about that ride that isn't for everybody because it is intense. I've talked to people who've ridden this at night and Velocicoaster at night and said that it actually felt more intense at night than Velocicoaster. But this is Hagrid's Motorbike. I don't think you'll find anybody who will say this isn't one of the top 5 rides in the Orlando area. So why don't you talk about this one, Marisa?
Yeah, so this is one that I actually haven't had a chance to get on yet because when I was at the parks after it opened, it was down all day long. And, we kept checking the app and we're like, is it up yet? Is it up yet? But no such luck. Fortunately, it means we have an excuse to go back. So I guess I just have to go another day so I can ride this ride. Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure is a mouthful of a name, but every single person I've talked to who's ridden it has said it is one of their favorite rides. And basically, the story is Hagrid, who's the groundskeeper of Hogwarts. He teaches a Care of Magical Creatures class. He's known for having some strange creatures as friends or companions hanging around his hut. You're going through the Forbidden Forest, which is on the bounds of Hogwarts, and there are some creatures loose. You encounter Hagrid. You see a few different types of these magical creatures along the way, and it's a really intense, exhilarating coaster.
And anybody who's listened to the show a lot knows that drops are my thing. That's the thing where I have the toughest time. If you're like me, when I do Hagrid's, I ask to be in the back. Now, most rides, that's counterintuitive. If you're riding Expedition Everest over at Disney's Animal Kingdom, the back is the most intense because you go down the hill forward. So there's more energy pulling you down in the back seat than there is in the front seat. However, you drop backwards in Hagrid's. So you want to be in the back seat because you don't go up as high when it turns time to fall down. And the difference in intensity between the back seat and the front seat is measurable. If you want a more intense experience, go to the front. If you're looking to maybe just experience one of the best rides in the world, but you don't necessarily need all of that intensity, then ask for the back.
That's a great tip. That's one that I'm definitely going to keep in mind when I finally get to ride it.
And then the restaurant here at Hogsmeade is 3 Broomsticks. I know you have eaten there, Marisa, so why don't you talk about it?
Yeah, so 3 Broomsticks is the restaurant that you see in the movies they go to eat at. Again, it's themed incredibly. You really feel like you're there. And their menu is really good. I've eaten there for lunch, and I got their fish and chips. I'm sure that actual British people would probably say they're not very authentic. But as an American, I thought they were very good. I really enjoyed them. They've got a bunch of other meals. I know they have like a type of feast option that you can get that feeds a few people, and it's got some traditional British foods, and that's supposed to be very good. Again, they do have some more non-adventurous options because not everybody wants traditional fare. But that's a nice little place to take a break during the day and go sit down, have a nice themed meal that still ties into your experience. You don't lose any of that theming or any of those Harry Potter touches while you're eating, which is really nice.
And then this was just an incredible episode. I really enjoyed this. Going over both lands of the wizarding world of Harry Potter with a Harry Potter fanatic. It was really fun. And before we go, I just want to ask one thing. And that's, as somebody who did get into these books and movies when I think you said you were 6, what do they mean to you? What does the Harry Potter story mean to you? And why did it capture you so much?
Well, I think as a kid, there's just, the magic of it all, both the magic in the world, but then the magic that you find when you're reading it and you're transported to this other place where magic is real and these, kind of scary things can happen. And it's a great entrance into the world of fantasy for children. But then as you grow and you read the books, they grow with you. And I was very fortunate to start them as a child. So as I grew and the books got more intense, I was getting older and more into that intense reading. And, it gets a little dark, but there's ultimately this resounding message of love. And it's the love that saves the day. It's the love of the friendship. It's the love of the family, the family that you find and the family that you're born with. And it's this really important message that with love, you can do all things and you can conquer things. And it's such an important trait to have. Because of that message, I think it's resounded with so many people. And I've been able to find communities that that take that to heart and really do believe in that message of friendship and bravery and love. And it's become, it sounds silly, but it has become a home where you're in this world that now has a nostalgic appeal as well. And you feel comforted going back there. You have friends also grown with it and who also find that magic in it. There's just something so uniquely fantastical, magical about the world itself, but ultimately the community it's founded. And I think that's a really important thing to note, is that the story has gone beyond the story. Like it doesn't stop with that universe that J.K. Rowling created. It's kind of taken on a life of its own, and the fans have taken a lot of ownership of it to turn it into something that's a lot deeper and a lot more meaningful than I think she could ever have intended.
And what an incredible way to end this episode. I really appreciate you joining us, Marisa. As always, it's a pleasure to have you.
It is always a pleasure to be on. Thanks for letting me come chat about one of my oldest interests.
This is Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. In just a second, my wife Courtney and I will have our dining review of Storybook Dining at Artist Point with Snow White at Walt Disney World. First, I want to tell you about something that is very important to me. Later this year, I'll be going on a 620-mile pilgrimage along the Ireland Way to raise money and awareness for the nonprofit organization Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence. This is a cause that is very important to me, and there's a link to donate in the description. Any amount of money you can donate would mean the world to this organization. My goal is to get smaller donations from my friends and listeners of this podcast so that I can go to larger donors and show them I'm serious. That's where your donation could be amplified by many degrees. Of course, this is a travel podcast, so I'll have an episode or two on this journey in the future. Thank you for all your help. Now, Courtney is here to talk some food. Thanks for being here, Court.
Always happy to be here.
So we recently had the chance to dine at Storybook Dining at Artist Point with Snow White. This is at Disney's Wilderness Lodge Resort, which is not only our favorite resort on Walt Disney World property, but it has some really, really good dining as well. In addition to Artist Point, there is also Whispering Canyon Cafe, which is an all-you-care-to-enjoy dinner, and it can be an all-you-care-to-enjoy breakfast, and that is really, really good. We've always loved that one. There is the bar lounge Geyser Point, which is really, really popular as well. And the quick service location Roaring Fork is also sneaky good. So there's a lot of really good dining here at Disney's Wilderness Lodge. And we've been looking forward to Storybook Dining at Artist Point with Snow White for quite some time. Courtney was going to be celebrating a milestone birthday in May of 2020. So way back when you used to have to make dining reservations 180 days in advance, we had made this for her milestone birthday. And then, of course, with the pandemic, that ended up getting canceled. And we finally had the opportunity to do it very recently. This is a prix-fixe menu, $60 per adult plus tax and gratuity, and $39 per child plus tax and gratuity. And we were able to get 10% off of that with our annual pass holder discount. So this being a prix-fixe menu, the first thing we got was the "And So the Story Begins" shared appetizers. Now, we did not share these appetizers because I'm a vegetarian, so they had to make my order different than Courtney's order, but this is what she got. The wild mushroom bisque, the wicked shrimp cocktail with Bloody Mary vinaigrette, seaweed salad, and spiced house-made seasoning, and the hunter's pie, turkey and chicken, black truffle, cranberry preserve, and crispy sauerkraut. So, Courtney, why don't you tell me about these 3 items?
So starting with the mushroom bisque, I really loved this. It was hearty and creamy. Now, one thing to just note with these appetizers is that they are very small portions. I believe this is considered more of a fine dining, and the portions were maybe about 2 bites. 2 to 3, I would say. The next item was the hunter's pie meatball, and I like this as well. I would describe this as a sweeter style meatball, maybe like an Asian style or kind of a Swedish meatball. I was wishing that there was maybe a little bit more to it, and it was on sort of a flaky biscuit, and the biscuit was a little hard and just not the consistency I was expecting, but good. Lastly, I really enjoyed the shrimp cocktail. And this is kind of described as sounding like it could be spicy, but it was not spicy. It had maybe the tiniest little kick to it, so those who are sensitive to spice, this should be something that is okay for you. I thought the shrimp cocktail was very flavorful. Sometimes shrimp can be bland. And then it paired nicely with a sweet seaweed salad and a very light salad underneath. So this was a great way to start out the whole meal.
So my appetizers started with some vegetarian spring rolls, and Disney does really good spring rolls. These were very vinegary. They also had a lot of black pepper, like a really strong black pepper taste, but I liked them. As sort of my version of the wild mushroom bisque, I had a wild mushroom consommé, which I loved. It was really rich. It was very, very flavorful, a word that Courtney likes to use a lot, but it was strong, and it was hard to get through a very, very small serving of it, but it made that small serving seem more substantial because it was so rich. And the final item was a take on the hunter's pie, except for mine was with Impossible Burger, and it was really good. I mean, it was just a little hunk of Impossible with some seasoning. Awesome. So we are going to move on now to the core of the story entrees. You can choose one of these options between the cottage beef stroganoff, the royal prime rib roast, a roll through nature, which is asparagus, leeks, arugula, gnocchi, sage parmesan. This is featured in the book Delicious Disney, Walt Disney World Recipes and Stories from the Most Magical Place on Earth, in case you were wondering. Also, Magic Mirrors, slow roasted pork shank, Brothers Grimm herb chicken, Bashful's butter poached sustainable fish, and the sorceress spell of Trickin' Chicken, the plant-based option. Courtney, you got the Royal Prime Rib Roast with horseradish, mashed potatoes, carrots, and jus. So why don't you talk about that one?
This was a large portion, but just the perfect amount, if that makes any sense. Since we wanted to, of course, enjoy all of the food, which would include the appetizers that we discussed and dessert, we felt like we were getting really our money's worth with the prime rib roast, and it was prepared wonderfully. I'm not a person who normally eats a lot of steak or prime rib or those type of things, but I definitely thoroughly enjoyed it, could tell that it was made well. It was presented very nicely. The perfect amount of jus, very juicy. The carrots were tender, but yet crisp.
But here's the deal. I need to hear about these horseradish mashed potatoes because I am Irish on one side of my family and German on the other side of my family. So this is like the best you could possibly get for that scenario. We come from central Pennsylvania with the Pennsylvania Dutch cooking, so the horseradish mixed in with the potatoes. I gotta hear your answer here.
Okay, so they were good. I don't know if they were what I was expecting or if they would be up everybody's alley, if everybody would like them, because I'm an Italian person more so, and I like my garlic mashed potatoes. They were definitely prepared well. They were definitely creamy and, that nice kind of home-cooked flavor that you get from real potatoes, good quality ingredients. They kind of erred on the side of a little sour, perhaps almost a little bit of sour cream, and then horseradish flavoring, which was not too strong because, as we know, horseradish can be a very potent, almost spicy hot, and this was not that. So they were good. They just were not what I was expecting, and maybe not my favorite thing because I tend to gravitate towards garlic mashed potatoes. I think you would have liked them though, Rick.
And I got the Sorceress Spell of Chicken Chicken. This is cauliflower puree, roasted vegetables, and a plant-based vegetable jus, all around what amounts to a fake chicken breast. The few times I've had this artificial plant-based chicken at Walt Disney World, I have really liked it. It has that same flavor palette as real chicken, but they do have to season it well for it to really feel like a good dish, and they did. There was seasoning all along the top of it, and I really enjoyed it, but unlike Courtney's portion, which was huge, and she was getting prime rib, I feel for $60 in a prefix menu, I could have had 2 slices of the chicken chicken. I'm already kind of getting ripped off on a prefix menu by going vegetarian, and I think that they could have just made it a little bit bigger portion because it was beautiful, it tasted great, it just was not filling compared to this monster portion that Courtney had on her plate. So that's like my only little critique. Then we ended with the sweet endings shared desserts. Much like with the appetizers, we didn't get the exact same thing because some of the items contained gelatin. There's the Miner's Treasures, which is cookie and cream, panna cotta, and chocolate gems. This was the one I was not able to get because it had mousse in it. Instead, I got a mango chia pudding. Then there's the fairy tale gooseberry tart, meringue and gooseberry. I was able to have this one as well. And the poison apple, dark chocolate, apple mousse, and sour center. That poison apple was really good. I enjoyed it even though I don't normally like dark chocolate, but the apple mousse and sour center kind of interacted well with it, and if it was more of a milk chocolate, it might not have tasted the same. The fairy tale gooseberry tart I liked as well, and the mango and chia pudding was also really, really good. So I would say that the desserts were pretty nice, and being that I am a vegetarian, I was still able to have 2 of the 3, and I guess we'll talk about the other thing you also get, so I was only able to have 2 of the 4. But before we get to that other item, Courtney, what did you think of all 3 of these?
I loved all of these. I thought they were a perfect ending to the meal. Again, they were smaller bites. They were sweet without being overly sweet. The Miner's Treasure panna cotta had a very nice vanilla flavoring. To me, it didn't exactly taste like a cookies and cream. It was more just a vanilla bean, but I really loved it. It definitely had those really nice Disney touches where it was themed to feel like one of the dwarfs. So there was an edible chocolate little dwarf hat on top and little gems made of chocolate, and it was just presented so nicely. I agree with Rick about the poison apple mousse. I loved this. It was fruity, but it just had that little tinge of dark chocolate that blended so well, and it was something different. The gooseberry pie tart also was a little bit different. It was kind of maybe an apple pie flavor, but more tart. And it was just one of those flavors that you don't have all the time. You're not really sure what to expect. And then it's a pleasant surprise.
And the end of the dessert comes with the Hunter's Gift to the Queen. It is an incredible presentation where your server comes out with, I'm assuming it's dry ice that creates a smoky atmosphere around a box, and then it's opened, and there are these 2 chocolate truffles that have soft insides. Unfortunately, there's gelatin in these, so I was not able to have either of them, which was fortunate for Courtney because she was able to have both of them. So why don't you describe those, Court?
The first one was a pink heart that was a raspberry and white chocolate flavor. It was good. It was just kind of a standard chocolate candy, a little sweet. The second one was very good. It was maybe a gem shape, and it was a coffee caramel macchiato flavor. So some salt, caramel, dark chocolate, and coffee. It was really good.
And obviously, we're not paying $60 per person for the 2 of us to just have a dinner. Storybook Dining at Artist Point with Snow White, of course, is a character meal. You get to meet Snow White as well as Grumpy, Dopey, and the Evil Queen. It's all part of the atmosphere and the surroundings as well. So why don't you talk about that aspect of the meal?
I was absolutely in heaven. I love Snow White. I think she just brings such a smile to my face. She's always happy and sweet. The dwarfs are fun. And the Evil Queen just has one of the most awesome personalities. I think that a lot of people do appreciate the villains, and you don't get to see the villains very often in Disney. The Evil Queen just had the best mannerisms and interaction.
And obviously, at this price point, you're already going to want it to take a long time. You're going to want it to be a big part of your day, but make sure you're giving yourself a lot of time. Snow White will go around to every table for about 20 minutes, and then Grumpy and Dopey will come out and go around to all the tables for about 20 minutes, and then for about another 20 minutes, the Evil Queen will come out and go around to all the tables. So to get the opportunity to see all of the characters, you're already going to be there for an hour. I would say we were probably there for about an hour and a half, an hour 45 minutes. It is a long meal. It takes a long time. They bring out the appetizer and then the entree and then the dessert based on a schedule. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it has to do with when the characters are meeting. Everything is very, very organized, and it is designed to take a long time. So just keep that in mind if you're doing this. Our meal started at 6:50, and we were walking out at like 9 o'clock. If you're going with kids, those are the kind of things that you want to take into consideration if you make an 8 o'clock dining reservation there. But overall, it was a great experience. I know Courtney had a blast, this being like a rescheduled birthday dinner for her, and I was really wanting to make sure that it was special and that she enjoyed it, and that was definitely the case. I always love going to Disney's Wilderness Lodge and just walking around because it's so beautiful, and this just was another excuse to go to Disney's Wilderness Lodge. It's a hard reservation to get, but if you get it, I say go through with it. Definitely eat there. It is an experience that you might not need every time you go to Walt Disney World, but if you can get it, do it.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, Rick. It is just so enjoyable, but it is a lot of money and it takes a little bit of time, so it's not something that you want to do all of the time. It was great for a special celebration, a birthday celebration, perhaps an anniversary celebration. And I just wanted to also add a few other notes about the experience. Again, I think that you are paying for the characters, of course, but also the overall atmosphere. I enjoyed the entire thing. You are allowed to interact and take pictures just from a distance, a little bit distanced. So you can't hug the characters at this point. To me, still just as enjoyable. Really no difference. The interactions are fantastic. The songs and the overall atmosphere is so happy, so lively, so entertaining. So I just wanted to add those other things. And again, say that overall, my overall impression is that this is a really fun dining experience that I think everybody should try at least once, if not a few times. It was just so great. It was so enjoyable.
So there you have our dining review for Storybook Dining at Artist Point with Snow White. Courtney, thanks for being on the show again.
Thanks so much for having me, Rick.
This is Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty, and I'm going to give you this week's question to be entered to win the 1-year anniversary prize pack. The prize pack includes a lot of Disney and Universal items, but is not associated with either company. Just answer this question in the comments for the episode on the YouTube channel and be subscribed to our channel. A correct answer is good for 3 entries and an incorrect answer is worth 1 entry. You can find clues at twitter.com/TGTT podcast. The winner will be drawn by a random number generator on March 2nd at 9 p.m. Eastern and announced on March 3rd's episode. Here we go. In May of last year, Marisa was in town for a Walt Disney World vacation, and the two of us ate at one of the best restaurants on property. What was that restaurant? Good luck. This has been episode 56 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. I'm probably going to be flying solo on the show next week because I have a park pass reservation for the opening day of Epcot's International Flower and Garden Festival, and I want to tell you all about it. Until then, have a great week.